For those who don't follow me, I started a company in Quebec, Canada, called Galion Audio. Now the primary language here is French. Galion is French for Galion. And today I will talk about the first affordable solid-state amplifier, the TS A75, which I've just brought to market. Now TS stands for Thomas in Stereo, A75 stands for A for amplifier, and 75 for 75 watt. Now I define affordable as if you work in Canada at minimum wage, you only need to eat instant noodles for a month to save up for it. It is hi-fi after all, where the sky is the limit. Now the Galion TS A75 costs $1,495 US, and I'm marketing it as a giant killer. Now of course, to call your product a giant killer is like calling your kid the smartest kid at school. Although as parents, we all like to believe that, reality can be harsh. Give me a few minutes and let me attempt to explain my logic. Now I think the term giant killer has been overused to the point where there might be a negative association with the word giant killer. Too many people have gotten burned by the promise of God-level performance, only to realize you get what you pay for. So, over the last few years, I've tried over 100 amplifiers at my home, from $100 to over 20 grand. Now, most amplifiers I use are over $3,000, which is my frame of reference. So when I talk about the TS A75's performance, it is relative to $3,000 amplifiers. Of course, those who follow me know I have experience even with amplifiers over 50 grand. So the first thing you will notice is the TS A75 has a lot of air.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
I know the word air is an alien concept to some of you. To some, it is even considered snake oil reviewers use to justify why high-end amps are better. Air, one way to describe it, feels like the notes linger longer in space. There's a sense of space and layering in the soundstage. But just because you have a $3,000 amp does not mean you will automatically have air. What if I tell you the TS A75 has more air than many high-end multi-$1,000 amplifiers I have tried? I am so confident in that. If you buy it and you bring it to A/B test against your friend's high-end amp, and you tell me, well, don't forget to take a photo, that your friend's amp destroyed the A75 in terms of air, send it back. And I will not charge you a restocking fee. On top of that, if I meet you at an audio show, demand that I apologize to you and buy you coffee. So for all of you who have always wondered that mysterious air Thomas has been nagging for years, I give you a chance to experience it. And I can tell you that if you want more air than this amp, your next stop is a $6,000 amp. Now, for those who can explain air better than me, please comment and help me out. Remember to specify which amplifier you have and speakers. So is that all, Thomas? You're a giant killer? Nope. The next thing you'll notice is resolution and detail. Once again, we often hear this when people describe gear that it's no longer a big deal, right? My affordable $800 B&W 607 speakers can give me plenty of detail. So Thomas, what is the big deal? I know we're talking about amps, okay, not speakers, but my point is that hi-fi gear today that can deliver a lot of detail is as common as toilet paper. However, there is a difference in the level of transparency, detail, and resolution. So Dave from the YouTube channel made a video on the TS A75 pre-production sample. I like how he described how shocked he was with the TS A75 resolution. See, before trying the A75, he listened to this $1,000 mainstream integrated amp. He said it felt like musicians were in front of him. Now, remember, everything in life is relative, right? After he tried the TS A75, he felt like with that mainstream integrated amp, he was listening outside the room, while with the TS A75, he felt like he stepped into the room. The saying, it feels like you have removed a layer of veil, will be exactly how some of you will feel. You want to hear the singer's breath as if you were wearing a stethoscope and you want your speaker's tweeter to sparkle like no tomorrow, the TS A75 resolution will satisfy your deepest, darkest desires. So, is that all, Thomas? You're a giant killer, is that it? Nope. Next thing you'll notice is the amp has a very good dynamic contrast. Some amps sound flat and anemic, actually crappy amps, while the good ones sound dynamic. When I talk about good dynamic contrast, I mean the swing from the lows to high is fast and extended. The highs goes higher and the lows go lower. I like how Mr. Kanta describes it. Crappy amps. The dynamic feels like a pond with few variation and ripples and is boring. Meanwhile, the good amps are like oceans with big waves and swing. It is exciting and engaging. You need an amp with good dynamic contrast if you're into classical music. Now, if you listen only to voice, yeah, you can get away with an amp with crappy dynamic contrast. Regardless, if you have a lot of experience, you can pick it up within 30 seconds. See, when I first powered up the TS A75 at Mr. Vintage's home, it's one of my audio buddy, I remember his first reaction, wow, good dynamic contrast. It feels elastic. So, is that it, Thomas? Your giant killer? Nope. The bass and the power on the TS A75 are so powerful that it can revive you from a cardiac arrest. Some of you might be suspicious because this amp is only 75 watts. How can it sound muscular, punchy, and authoritative? If you pop the hood, you'll see two Toledo transformers, one on top of the other. Generally, you might find 4 to 8 10,000 UF capacitors like these, I'm going to show a photo, in an affordable amp. So it adds up to about 40,000 UF. The A75 has 20 capacitors, 200,000 UF. You can imagine how much reserve the A75 has. I leave what all this means to your imagination, but the bass on this amp will give your neighbor a reason to knock on your door. Let me tell you a story. Now, if you come to my home, you'll see many different iterations of the TS A75 because I keep asking the designer to change something. For example, can you make the upper mid-range smoother? Finally, after many attempts, they sent me the final version. I was devastated because I would hear distortion with some songs I'm familiar with that have low bass. I even called the designer of my upcoming Class A amp, asking him to help me measure the TS A75. And guess what? Luckily, it turns out the bass was so strong that the top plate of my heater board was vibrating. That was the distortion I was hearing. If you ever check out the customer TS120 reviews on the Galion website, one thing in common you'll see is that everybody says the bass is amazing. I no longer need to turn on my subwoofer after I got the TS120. I can predict the future. For some A75 reviews, I no longer need my subwoofer. You'll find those reviews. And by the way, the TS A120 has won the highly commended Product of the Year award in the Hi-Fi Plus magazine. Not to mention, every YouTuber who has made a video on it gave it a very positive review. So is that it, Thomas, your giant killer? Well, I can talk about the speed of the amp, which is fast, and I can talk about the instrument separation, but you know what? How about I don't spoil the whole movie? Try it for yourself and come back to leave a comment on what you have discovered. Will I owe you coffee? If you love it, remember to buy me a coffee. I only drink Tim Hortons coffee. Now, for the specs of the amp, you know what, check the website. You know, it has RCA, true XLR, 75 watts into 8 ohms, 100 watts into 4 ohm. I had the amp measured by a third party and the overall measurements were okay. Now, Thomas, there is no such thing as a perfect amp. Now, if I were a salesman, I would hide all the negatives. Well, then again, there is a 14-day trial period, so there's no point hiding the negatives. Also, as I said at the beginning of the video, I want to set the correct expectations. First, this amp has a lot of clarity and is slightly lively. Now, for some of you, it's like going from DVD to 4K. Not everyone wants to see the pimple of their favorite actor. So for some of you, the amp will have too much clarity and detail. If you find it too lively because you have, let's say, focal speakers, and you wish that it was a bit smoother, yeah, you can use a Schitt Freya preamp with new old stock, a ladder back DAC, a ladder back preamp, or any smooth sounding preamps. And another thing you can get is authentic Van Den Hoe cables, which will give you that extra smoothness. Please don't get the fake ones from AliExpress because those don't work. Another thing you can do is get an R2R DAC. Next, when you power up the amp, give it at least 1 minute to warm up or it will sound thin. Finally, this is a fast sounding amp, a bit like a high performance sports car. So if you're looking for a relaxed and laid back presentation like a sedan, yeah, this is not for you. So who is this for then? If you have the Buchardt S400, Q Acoustic Concept 500, Polk Audio something, CSS2T DX. It also worked really well with the Pearl Acoustics Sibelius, the upcoming TS Voyager with transmission line. I even drove the Studio XDB from Gershman really well with this amp. Well, basically speakers on the smooth side. You love those speakers to death and wish there were just a bit more liveliness, a bit more detail, then the A75 is just what the doctor prescribed. If you want to experience an airy soundstage with lots of detail and resolution, this amp is for you. You always wish there was a bit more bass and dynamic and you want to avoid investing in a subwoofer, this amp is for you. You have entry-level amplifiers like Schitt Vidar and you like to upgrade, like an actual upgrade, not like I plug in the new amp, I think the bass is better, maybe more detail. No, no. You want to plug your new amp in and go like, Thomas, I love you. If you have a vintage slow sounding system with mushy bass and desire to step into the new century and experience a fast sounding and tight bass presentation, yep, you can go for the TS A75. You have a tube integrated amp with glorious mid-range, but you always wished it had a bit more bass and your speakers can buy amp, then get the TS A75, buy amp with your low power tube amp and get fantastic bass. You have a hard to drive speaker and you wish you had more power, even if you currently have a 75 watt amplifier, maybe even 100 watts, you can still try this amp. Banapan? Sure, give it a try. As long as you don't play it at like 90 dB volume, okay? A bit of common sense is needed. See, unlike 80% of the amps on the market, which is voltage feedback design, this TS75 A75 is a current feedback design amp. Now, I'm not going to attempt to explain the difference between current feedback and voltage feedback design. Like, you know, current feedback, you got Acouphase, you got Passlab. But this amp, okay, despite only 75 watt, is a powerhouse. All right, let's wrap it up now. And I'll finish it with two short videos. One is with Jason and Pete from the Audiophile Junkie, and a reaction video from Frederick. See, Frederick owns a pair of Polk 707, and I know those speakers are on the dark side and very hard to drive. In fact, with one of my cheap Class D amp, the amp would shut down to protect itself after playing for 30 seconds. I wanted to know how it compared to his $5,000 Italian integrated amp. You should see his reaction when I told him it was only $1,495. Till next time.
You feel as he's breathing in to start talking, you know, or the small inhale, exhale, very small things that are easier to hear.
Okay, so we call that a little bit more resolution.
Yeah, I guess.
Right, that's it. So you hear a little bit more mid-range resolution, little nuances.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what it is. All right, so you want to take a guess, how much is that amplifier?
I don't know, but I'd say it has to be at least 4,000, something like that. Because, well, you know, again, I have no idea, but the thing is, it seems to have more power than the, I think a lot more. It feels like that because as I run the preamp through, you know, and again, that's the first thing. but it doesn't have a preamp, so maybe, I don't know. If I had to give it a price, let's say maybe that preamp's worth 2,000. Let's say that amp 6, so 4 maybe. You know,
About $4,000.
That's what I would say.
Canadian or US?
Well, I guess if you say 6,000 Canadian, but yeah, Canadian, I guess.
All right, so that power amp, I am selling it for US 1,495.
Wow. Yeah, that's. I mean, is it the Class D amp?
No, it's Class AB.
Wow.
I know. See the shock there?
Yeah, I mean,
think about that for a second.
Maybe I'm not up to date with prices. You know, I don't know, but to me, amps that I tried in that range,
yeah,
not all. Don't get me wrong, but often they lacked power, and if they had the power, they lack refinement. That I got both, I feel.
Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the famous Jason YouTuber and his sidekick Pete.
Pete the Greek.
Pete the Greek. And they were at my room today to listen to the new TS 75. They didn't get to hear the TS 34, but it's fine. TS 75. And what do you think? There we go.
Great value. Very dynamic, very transparent, a lot of punch, and the price is ridiculously low. I believe it's underpriced, but a lot of bang for the buck.
Thank you.
Definitely one of the better rooms in the entire show.
How sexy is that speaker? Or was it surprising, the speakers?
The synergy between the speakers and the amp, it sounded fantastic. That track that you played, Ghost Rider.
Oh yeah, Make Us Stronger.
Make Us Stronger. Unbelievable. At that price point, amongst the best I've heard at that price point. I mean, fantastic.
Awesome.
Very good.
Make sure I buy you lunch after. All right, Jason.
So, first of all, I want to give you kudos for running a demo properly. You did a wide variety of tracks, and you just gave us a taste of piano, the dynamic stuff, and I got a good taste of what that amp could do, a variety of material with the speakers. They're very efficient speakers, but that 75 watts was more than enough. And the price point, like you say, I think you'd fool a lot of people if you blind test them. So, yeah, I mean, anybody in that budget profile and even much higher should at least demo your new amp. I like it.
Thank you. Thank you.
I never think, I never know how I'm stuck and left alone. I've been lost, I've been fine. My cause is not defined. When you kiss me, when you